Beautiful hand-drawn animation, a magnificent soundtrack, fun gameplay, challenging difficulty, and replayability. What hasn't been said about Cuphead yet? After 7 long years of hard work from Studio MDHR, they managed to captivate millions of players with what's considered as one of the best indie games of all time, as well as one of my personal favorite games. Completing the entire game was really enjoyable for me. But even then, I wasn't tired of Cuphead yet, so I decided to replay the game with some extra difficulty. I've seen several people doing various challenges with this run-and-gun masterpiece, but I wanted to create my own one, something that has never been done before. And today, I'm here to present it. So, is it possible to beat Cuphead without using left and right? Before I begin, there are 2 rules to understand. 1. In any stage, it is forbidden to move right, to move left, which means no turning around, and to shoot in diagonals, which requires the sideways controls. To move the player character, dashing, moving platforms, EX attack knockbacks, and damage knockbacks are necessary, nothing else. This rule obviously doesn't apply to the world map, the menus, and the shop. 2. In each run-and-gun stage, not a single coin must be missed, since the coins are the most important elements of these levels. And for those of you who want to attempt this challenge, I made a strategy guide that you can download from the description below. Just don't try it if you have never played Cuphead before. Trust me, I have done this entire challenge alone, but it can be done with 2 players, as long as both respect the rules. So, without further ado, let's begin. So, at the start of the game, we can go straight to the tutorial. Oh yeah, we can't go left. Well, no worries, I can just reset the level. Just a few dashes and... Okay, the tutorial is inaccessible. But even if we could enter it, we wouldn't go very far before getting stuck again. So instead, let's go talk to this apple dude and get 3 coins from him. Then, we can spend them on a hard charm and get a 4th health point, which is absolutely crucial for the first step of this challenge, Forest Follies. Although this is the very first level, completing this stage with only dashes and knockbacks took me between 4 and 5 hours. Yes, it's very demanding. First off, when entering the forest, I have to dash until I touch this wall, before jumping above it. I must be this far from the wall. This will be important later. After that, the first half of the stage isn't too bad after enough practice, so I don't have much to say about it. However, eventually, we get to our first problem. One single dash isn't enough to cross this large pit, so I have to take a hit to continue. Then, after a couple of enemies, I get to the second large pit, which I can cross easily, if I dashed far enough from this wall. If I decided to jump and to dash without touching it, I wouldn't be positioned properly to cross this pit without taking damage. After beating this mini-boss, we get to the hardest part of the stage. I must have a full super meter at this point, because I need knockbacks to adjust some jumps and dashes. Precision, timing, and patience are important all the way through. This part ends with one last pit that I can cross by taking a hit, or by moving back and using 2 dashes. So, in summary, we have 1 pit that has to hurt me and 2 more pits that can potentially hurt me as well, with 4 health points, plenty of other pits to deal with, and a ton of enemies coming from everywhere at once. And that's my biggest problem with this stage. I must not get hit by any enemy or projectile during the entire level, so I can have better chances to cross the last part. It requires an almost perfect run, and that's why Forest Follies took me so long to beat. But in the end, this stage is entirely possible without left and right. It felt like a huge achievement for me. But this is just the beginning of this challenge. This is just the very beginning. Before starting the bosses, we have to buy another important item for the challenge, the chaser weapon. The first boss will be, of course, the Rootback. The potato is as easy as ever, same for the onion, as long as I don't get hit by too many tears. The carrot is also simple, especially with the chaser. However, after dashing to avoid the projectiles, I get stuck on the right side of the screen, but with a few precise jumps and dashes, I can dodge them and beat the stage. Next, we have Ribby and Croaks. For the first phase, once again, I can easily stand still while avoiding Ribby's projectiles and Croxus flies. For the second phase, dashing through the wind and dodging the attacks is such a breeze, no pun intended. Then, the last phase finally cranks up the difficulty. After reaching and parrying the crank, I can either face the green platforms, the simplest ones, the fire platforms, also simple, and those with the bouncing balls, which I can't even get through at all. But overall, that's another easy battle for me. Before we get to the next boss, we can access the first Mausoleum. So let's give it a try. Okay, it's impossible to do it alone. So I need a second character, Mugman, and since I'm alone to do this challenge, I'll have to control both characters by myself. With this method, it's really easy. I could beat it on my first try. Now that we have the energy beam, we can move on. The next boss, Goopy Legrand, finally proves to be the first tough boss of this challenge. I don't have much to say about this one, you already see the problem. I have to constantly anticipate how far he will jump and to dodge as best I can, which gets much harder on the second phase. With knockbacks and dashes as my only ways to move, I can just barely avoid him. Fortunately, things become a bit easier on the final phase. All I have to do is to use the chaser and to dodge his slam attack. And before I get stuck again, I'm already done. Next, our first airplane boss, Hildaberger. But first, we have to go through the airplane tutorial. Or not. Even without using left and right, this boss is not really different than usually. The only major differences are the Gemini's Vortex attack, which requires a super art to defend myself, and the Sagittarius, with the homing blue stars that I can't even dodge. Also, like for Forest Follies, it's better not to get hit at all, because I need my 4 health points for the final phase, the hardest one. The flying saucers are the most troublesome part of this stage. The yellow ones only attack in front of me, which is practical, but the red ones only attack when they are right above me, so I have no way to avoid them, unless I have another super art to defend myself. The red saucers basically serve as a time limit during this phase, and on my successful attempt, I literally made it at the very last second. Okay, time to finish the first world with Kegni Carnation. Since I begin the fight between 2 platforms, I have to start with the chaser and to use the knockback to reach the left platform. Unfortunately, I don't have much to say about this boss. His attacks are pretty simple to avoid, and the chaser can make the job very easy. Things only get interesting in the final phase. My energy beam must be fully charged so I can dodge the first vine attack. Then, I have to dash to avoid the next 2 vines. If I'm effective enough, Kegni should be defeated before the last vine comes. Now that the first world is finished, I can collect this hidden coin in the shoes. The second world is where the first real problems begin, with Baroness Von Bon Bon on simple mode. That's right, my current equipment doesn't allow me to fight her army on regular mode yet. Why? Because of the same problem as Goopy Legrand. My limited mobility versus a jawbreaker that constantly follows me, a floating and exploding waffle, a cone candy with fast and nearly unpredictable movements, a gumball machine that shoots tons of projectiles, and this cupcake. If I want to defeat them on regular mode, I have to be as quick and effective as I can, which is only possible with the invincibility, the charge, and the whetstone, which I don't have yet. Therefore, I decided to take no chance and to go on simple mode for the moment. Here, dealing with the gumball machine and the waffle isn't too bad, but the corn candy can be troublesome because of its fast mobility all around the screen. And don't get me started on the jawbreaker. As for the cupcake, it never shows up on simple mode, so there's nothing to say for now. For the Baroness, using the pea shooter on this platform makes the job simple enough. But of course, we will have to come back later on regular mode. After getting the bombs from this NPC, we can get to the next boss, Wally Warballs. So, for this one, well, I don't have much to say. The first phase isn't different than usually without moving sideways. Same for the second one. The third phase, however, is a bit more challenging. I can barely dodge the eggs when Wally's son comes close to me. Then, when I get to the final phase, it only gets tricky when the birds move to the left. Other than that, it's as simple as the first two phases. Next, we have the second Mausoleum. For this one, once again, I have to use two characters at the same time. This one took me a couple of tries, but I made it. As a reward, we are given the invincibility, the most important super art within this entire challenge. Soon you will understand why. Now, for the moment, we have to give a break to the boss battles so we can collect some coins and get better equipment because the difficulty is about to increase very seriously. And there's no better way to get some coins than the run and gun stages, starting with Funfair Fever. In the first tent, I have to avoid these balloons, which can be tough because of this trampoline, and to parry the pink ones to charge my super meter. After that, we have the second tent. Here, I must be careful when I deal with the platforms and the balls, otherwise they can easily become very deadly. Also, on this spot, I cannot reach this platform with a single dash, so I must take a hit. Even if my invincibility is ready, I need it to skip this mini-boss. Then, I have to grab this coin without taking damage. It's tricky, but with enough timing, I could make it. After defeating the shooting range without efforts, we get to the snacks and treats part, the last one. This one is quite stressful and it requires patience to avoid dashing into the hazards by accident. Also, I must not take any knockback before I reach the M% platform, otherwise I won't be able to reach it without taking another hit. Once the hot dog is defeated, I need at least 2 health points to cross this pit before finishing the stage. I can also choose to dash through the hot dog, which works as well. As you may have understood, I can only take damage once when I'm using the heart during the entire level, except for the 2 large gaps that I mentioned. But other than that, overall, it's a simple stage. Next, we have Funhouse Frazzle, after taking this shortcut behind the mountains to make our way to the level. This stage is extremely straightforward. The first part is simple, the mini-boss is easy, and this hallway is nothing difficult. What else can I say? Soon enough, we get to the fun part. Navigating on these platforms and dealing with the tubas requires some patience without being too hard. If my invincibility is ready, I can use it to skip the last tuba and to reach the second mini-boss. Here, I have to jump repeatedly to avoid moving too fast to the right. After a few seconds, he's already defeated. And that's literally all I have to say about this level. I currently have 12 coins, but I need a few more. So, I have to grab this hidden coin and to talk to this NPC who gives me another coin after using the shortcut. Before we go to the shop, let's move on to the next boss battle. And not any boss battle. Jimmy the Great is the first truly difficult boss of this challenge, especially because of the RNG involved. Of course, there's a lot of RNG in Cuphead, and a lot of attacks from enemies are selected with random chance. But this boss is where it starts to matter for real. Let me explain. The battle begins with one of 3 different attacks, one of them being the treasure attack, which is quite simple to deal with. The other 2 attacks, however, are absolute bullshit without left and right. First, we have the scimitars. When they are positioned horizontally, they can be dodgeable, except for the left one. But when they are placed vertically, right where I am, excuse me? Then, we have the cat sarcophagi. When they open, they release small artifacts that follow me around with no way to escape them, and they only open when they are right above or below me, so I cannot avoid this attack at all. Because of that, the treasure attack is the only acceptable one for this phase, and I confirm that it can take a lot of resets before getting this one. When this phase is finally done, we can move on to the second one. It's pretty simple to deal with, except for the saw blades at times. The same can be said for the third phase. nothing hard. But when we get to the fourth phase, things get complicated again. I have to get Jimmy's turban stuck on the side of the screen before dealing with its bullets and Puppet's projectiles. Most of the time, I can barely dodge them, but other times, I can't at all, unless I have a super art to save myself. Then, we get to the final phase, right after avoiding the turban with a super art, or with the invincibility following it. In this phase, my main problem is those pyramids. They can either spin clockwise, so I can have just enough space to dodge the hazards at the top of the screen, or they can spin counterclockwise. If I'm not careful when it happens, I'm forced to go to the bottom of the screen and I get stuck with very little space to avoid everything. This part takes plenty of precision, and as a reminder, every time I fail, I have to reset everything, including the luck-based first phase, easily the most frustrating part of this stage. It took me at least 2 hours to get through this battle, and when I finally did, I was really satisfied. But it's not over yet, because this stage has an alternate secret route. It's not necessary for this challenge, but I wanted to prove whether it's possible or not without left and right, making this our first optional step. First off, after the third phase, I have to turn into a small plane so Jimmy can scan me with this form. Then, it's basically the final phase again, but this time with Mini Puphead attacking me as well. Sure, I can parry his bullets, which is useful, but skipping the fourth phase means that Jimmy has way more health than before. Specifically, 910 from normal Puphead, plus 650 from the regular final phase, plus 505 for Mini Puphead, which makes 2065 health points, instead of the usual 650. This means that defeating Mini Puphead, then Jimmy can take up to 2 minutes, 2 full minutes just for the final phase. And again, after every death, I have to do the first phase all over again before going all the way back to the final phase to try my best to be nearly flawless for 2 minutes straight. Oh, and sometimes, this happens. I can't fight Mini Puphead anymore.
It's fantastic.
I mean, I can still defeat Jimmy without Mini Puphead, but the entire point of spawning this minion is to defeat him as well, which, fortunately, is entirely possible without left and right, after another 2 hours. Now, we can get to the shop and buy the smoke bomb, the coffee, the roundabout, and the charge. I really needed better equipment for the next boss, another difficult one. Beppy the Clown clearly wasn't made for a challenge like this. I had to use the smoke bomb to make it through, because the RNG makes this stage very frustrating for the wrong reasons. On the first phase, Beppy's movements are really annoying. At first, he cannot touch me, but as soon as he gets behind me, he frequently sticks himself on my ass until he decides to dash again. Sometimes, I can finish the first phase with at least 2 health points, but usually I end up with a single one for the rest of the fight, which leads us to the next phase, the worst one. These balloon dogs can be horrendous to deal with. Because of my limited movements, they can be a nightmare, especially when they get numerous and while standing on the roller coaster at the same time. It can be easy to dash or to land on a balloon dog by accident. Also, I must stay away from their spawn points because they can show up right on me and hurt or kill me in a split second. After I get through this, I reach the third phase. This one is also tricky, but at least the roller coaster can be useful to me most of the time. And I mean most of the time. After that, we finally get to the final phase. Here, I have to stand on the left side of the screen so I can jump on a platform as the roller coaster comes, then jump off and land precisely between the 4th and the 5th row of passengers so I can jump out after coming back to the left. To deal with the penguins, I can either use the invincibility or the energy beam, both can work. Eventually, after dealing with them, the roller coaster comes back and the same process as before must be done. Soon after, Beppy is defeated. Next, let's finish the second world with another difficult boss, Grim Matchstick. Surprisingly, I don't have much to say about this one. On the first phase, since the clouds constantly take me back to the left, sometimes I can just stand still on the edge of the screen while watching for the projectiles and the platforms. However, on the second phase, things become a bit harder. I cannot stay on the left anymore, so I have to jump repeatedly on the platforms to reposition myself whenever the clouds are too close or too far away to reach them with a dash. Along with that, I have to be low enough to deal damage with the roundabout, otherwise, well, it doesn't work. When I reach the third phase, obviously, things get worse again. Basically, when I hit a fireball, it breaks into 4 projectiles, and when I constantly shoot, it creates a mass of bullets all over the screen. A mass of bullets that can hit a fireball anytime, while I'm trying my best to focus on the platforms with limited controls and everything that Grim Matchstick is spitting at me. Yeah. Of course, if I avoid staying right in front of the fireballs, I can dodge the projectiles more easily, although it's not simple because of how confused this phase is. It's also better to get to the last phase at full health and to activate my invincibility when I'm about to take fall damage. After an hour of struggles, I could finally make it. Now, we can move on to the third world. Our next boss is Captain Brunibeard, another complex one. But first, we need to equip the heart. It's very important. My main problem with this stage is this barrel, which constantly moves back and forth and tries to crush me during the entire battle. Because of that, I have to move in a very specific way to be as effective as possible. As you can see, I must get hit twice by the barrel and use 2 EX attacks to move left with knockbacks. Also, I have to parry as many pink balls as possible to charge my invincibility before the barrel strikes for the third time. By the way, why am I supposed to be so far on the left? Because if I'm not far enough, even if I use my invincibility to avoid the third strike, the barrel will have enough time to attack again and hit me. And I prefer not to dash for the moment, because it would make dodging and parrying much harder. After using my super art, when the barrel comes for a fourth attack, if I haven't reached the final phase yet, I must get hit again, because I have to wait for my second invincibility. By that point, you may have understood that I can't get hit by anything other than the barrel for the whole fight. So, I must reset the fight if I get hit by a bullet, or the barrel in midair, or the shark, etc. Or even when my super art can't be ready for the third barrel strike, if the captain takes too long to shoot, or if I miss too many parries. Yup. It's a pretty demanding mixture of RNG and skills, but normally, before the barrel attacks for the 5th time, the final phase can begin. In fact, if I'm fast enough, it can even start right after the 4th strike. Oh, and finally, I can start dashing. I have to jump, dash, and activate my invincibility to avoid the fireballs, the barrel, and the pink laser. It took me some time to make this strategy, but eventually, I could win. Next, we have Calamaria, which is, guess what, one of the easiest bosses of this challenge. Finally, an easy boss. My only problems with this fight were the pufferfish, which sometimes can be unavoidable, the electrified dolphin, which has to hit me at least once, no matter what I do, and the seahorse, which gets me stuck at the top of the screen, and yeah. The second phase, on the other hand, is very simple for me. Dodging the bullets and unfreezing myself is nothing too hard. And yes, I did change the controls to avoid using left and right by accident when I unfreeze myself. As for the final phase, things can get a bit tight, but it's alright. I could beat this boss on my third attempt. Before we continue, I think this challenge is taking quite some time to talk about, and I don't want the video to be over 50 minutes long. So, this is the end of the first part. If you appreciate this challenge, like and share this video, and please check out the second part. Until then, bye bye!